Okay, we're asked to solve for x, solve this problem by factoring. All right, so what's our first step with factoring? Well, first we have to get everything on one side of the equation and set it equal to 0. So x squared x squared minus 2x, when we move the 2x over, minus 15 equals 0. Okay. So now we're set up and ready to factor our trinomial or our quadratic equation, this portion here, the x squared minus 2x minus 15. And if you remember, when you factor, you're kind of doing the reverse of the FOIL method where you multiply two binomials together. So if you remember, like if you have x minus 2 times x plus 1, maybe something like that, we would use the FOIL method. And we would say that means we multiply together our first terms, the x and the x, so we get x squared. When we multiply these two first, then we multiply the outer terms together, so that's the x times the 1 over here. That gives us a positive 1x or a plus x. When we do our inner terms, we have a negative 2 times a positive x, so we have a negative 2x right here. And then finally, when we multiply our last terms together, we get negative 2 plus 1, which is a negative 2. Combining like terms, we would get x squared minus x minus 2. So that's what the FOIL method would give us. We would take these two binomials, multiply them together, and we get this trinomial or this quadratic equation. Well, when we factor, we're doing the reverse of that. Okay, so we've got to figure out what this quadratic will break down, what two binomials we can break it down into. Okay. So we've got x squared at the beginning, so we know the first two terms are going to both be x, because x times x is x squared. The last term, the two numbers at the end of each binomial are going to have to be factors of 15, because remember, when we do the FOIL method, the last thing that we do is we multiply when we looked over here, we multiplied the negative 2 times the positive 1 over here. So we multiply those last two terms together, and that's what gives us the last value that we have in our quadratic equation or in our trinomial. So whatever numbers we have here, they've got to multiply together to give us a negative 15. Well, what are the factors of 15? 15, you could say 1 times 15, that gives us 15, right? Or 3 times 5, that's it. Those are the only factors of 15. And because of this negative sign right here, that tells us that we're looking for two numbers whose difference is going to give us the negative 2 that we have right here. Okay. If this value had been a plus sign, then we're looking for two numbers when added together will give us the value in the middle. But it's a negative sign on the end here, so we're looking for two numbers whose difference gives us negative 2. Well, 15 minus 1 gives you a 14. 5 minus 3 gives you a 2. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a 3 and a 5 as our factors of 15. And then finally, we've got to, when we take the difference of the two, we've got to get a negative value. And so we want the bigger number to be negative and the smaller number to be positive. Now we can check this out. We can do the FOIL method on this just to make sure that it gives us what we expect. X plus 3 times x minus 5. When we do first, we get x squared. When we do outer, we get negative 5x. When we do inner, we get positive 3x. And when we do last, we get negative 15. And combining those middle terms together, we get x squared minus 2x minus 15. So sure enough, that matches what we have in our trinomial right here. All right, so it looks like we did the factoring correctly. But we're not done. We need to also find what the possible values of x are. And so in order to do that, we have to recognize that anytime you multiply two variables to get two values together, let's just say a times b, okay? If they equal 0, then either a has to be 0, b has to be 0, or both have to be 0 in order for the answer to be 0 when you multiply those together, okay? So when we're finding the value of x here after factoring, we need to say that means that either this first term is equal to 0 or the second term is equal to 0. And so let's do that. If x plus 3 is equal to 0, then the value that we get for x is x equals negative 3. If x minus 5 is equal to 0, then the value for x is x equals 5. Now, to do this correctly, we should, sorry, I went full screen again, or left full screen. Let me bring that back. There we go. If we did this, what we actually need to do is we need to always plug our values back in to make sure that they do indeed, that we get a true statement, that this side truly equals 0 when we plug -3 and -5 in. And so when we do that for the first one, -3 squared minus 2 times -3 minus 15, does that equal 0? Let's see, -3 squared is 9, -2 minus times a -3 is going to give us a +6 minus 15. Does that equal 0? Sure enough, it does. We get 0 equals 0. And then for the other one, we have 5 squared. Plugging in the 5, minus 2 times 5 minus 15 equals 0. And 5 squared is 25. Minus 2 times 5 is 10. Minus 15. And again, we get 0 for that. So both of these check out. And so the answer for this particular problem would be x is equal to -3 or x is equal to 5.